Negative thoughts do not make you depressed, but this will. So I've been providing therapy since 2019. And when I first started off providing therapy, I used to use these two different frameworks. One was cognitive behavior therapy, which means I would help you try to change your thoughts because we believe that if we change your thoughts, we would then change your feelings. And if we could change your feelings, we could then change the actions that you take. So if you were thinking that you weren't good enough and that led you to feeling depressed, and because now you're feeling depressed, you're now smoking, drinking, procrastinating, self-sabotaging, like all that stuff. The mindset was that if I just changed your thoughts and made you think happier or made you think of something different, then the feelings will subside. It will maybe we'll be even able to bring on newer feelings, right? Positive feelings, as they call it, right? That was one of the frameworks that I used to use, and I gotta admit that it actually has some limitations. The other framework that I used to use as well was called REBT, right? Rational Emotional Behavior Therapy. And what we would do with this one was that we would try to rationalize all your thoughts. And I had a framework that I would run clients through, and we would help them to try to see that it's not that bad, if you will, or the negative thoughts that they have wasn't really valid, if you will. And again, this has some of its limitations. And the thing that really like got people stuck was when the thought was actually very valid. And I'll give you an example. If someone just failed a test, or let's say someone lost someone, right? Like a loved one has passed, or they had a breakup. If I went to them and said, hey, just don't think about it, or think positively, they would look at me like I'm crazy. They would think that I'm not a good therapist. They would think that I wasn't compassionate, or that I was invalidating everything that they were telling me, because I'm trying to get them to essentially ignore these things that are happening in their life. And that's where, again, not only people, but therapists can get caught up. They're of the mindset, if I can just get them to think more positively or think about something else, then it should bring about different feelings. And that's not how we should go about handling things like depression. And here's the thing about depression, guys. Again, people think that it's the negative thoughts that leads to depression, when that's not really the case. Because believe it or not, you can actually have negative thoughts that can lead to positive actions. And I'll give you guys a few examples. So one of the negative thoughts that I used to have was that I didn't have an ability to tell stories. I didn't have a great ability to communicate, to basically lure people in to listen to my message. I basically thought that I wasn't interesting. And because I had this thought, I had to ask myself, well, what does make someone interesting? And I talked a little about in previous podcasts about my desire to be curious. And that's one of the values that I have when it comes to my career. So I started to touch on this curiosity value and ask myself, well, what is it that the people that are good with communicating, so people that like whether it's T.D. Jakes or Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, Tony Robbins, like there's so many different names out there, even E.T., right? There's so many people that are good with storytelling. I have to ask myself, what is it that they're doing that I'm not doing? What is the skill that I need to practice that I haven't been practicing at all, right? By looking at this, by thinking critically, it actually forced me to actually go and find the answers, whether it be through YouTube videos, reading books, taking courses, so many different things. And now I have this ability to get on camera and tell stories about my past, or stories about clients that I've worked with that has been dealing with similar situations and things that you're dealing with. And this is something that has helped me build that confidence in this area. But I wouldn't have known that unless there was a negative thought basically saying, hey, right? It's telling me like, this is a place where you need to improve. Because let me ask you this question. Let's say you have a negative thought that's similar. Let's say it's a negative thought such as, no one likes me, or when I go out in public, everybody's looking at me, or, I'm not good with small talk, like whatever it is with communication. Let's just put it out there, right? Communication. How would your life look like? How would it feel if you were able to actually improve in this area and actually be really great? Think about that, right? Like, how would your life change if you took something that was a weakness and made it a strength? I'm pretty sure you would tell me that it would change everything for you. Because of that feeling, because of that thought that you have, I would tell you to really focus on everything that's geared towards improving your communication, helping you to feel more calm in public, whatever it is that you need. And let's see what happens. That's the power of negative thoughts. But it's not something that you have to hold on to. And that's where people find themselves depressed. I'll even give you guys another example. So my freshman year of college, I go in and I'm running track. I'm also having a work-study job. I have friends that I'm trying to keep up with. I have study hall. I have track practice. Like, there's so much that I'm doing as a freshman that it got very overwhelming. And it got so overwhelming that my GPA plummeted. And because my GPA plummeted, I had to quit the track team. I lost my scholarship, and I had to go from working just a work-study job to essentially working a full-time job while being in school. So it was really, really tough. But there was one class that was really hard for me. It was my statistics class. And ironically, in high school, I was really good in math. It was one of my strong suits, if you will. But when I took the statistics class, it was like no math that I've ever seen before. There's so many different paragraphs and stories and probabilities and all this other stuff that you had to figure out that it actually made it very difficult. It wasn't as clear cut and dry as I was used to. And I ended up failing that course, and I had to retake it. And I remember as I was signing up for the course, the thought that goes across my mind was, what if I fail again? What if I take this course and I fail it and I have to pay another maybe $1,200 just to retake this class? Because I had that negative thought, guys, going into my sophomore semester, when I got into that class, I made sure I sat in the front row. I made sure that I was asking questions. I made sure that I went to the math lab to get extra help on problems that I didn't remember. I did all of this because of that negative thought. And that negative thought actually spurred positive actions. And even as I say this now, this actually happened to me again in high school. Because in high school, I used to be in honors classes. But then there was one class I just completely bombed. It got so bad that when the fourth quarter came, I didn't turn in any homework. And the teacher was like, hey, Phil, should I just go ahead and put X's on the next few weeks? And I was like, yeah, because I wasn't doing anything. But when I retook that class again next year, I got to tell you guys, I was a freaking star. And one could say it's because I remembered a lot of it, so I didn't have to start from ground zero. But also it's because I knew what to expect when I got into that class. I knew that I had to really be on my A game, and I couldn't mess around like I did with my other classes. So what I'm trying to say is that, again, your negative thoughts is almost like a signal to you. It should be a signal to you that this is something that we need to work on. Or maybe it's a signal for you to go seek therapy, counseling, anything like that, right? To get help in that one area, all right? So what I'm trying to say is, again, negative thoughts can actually spur positive actions. I'll give you guys another example. So if you ever had the negative thought of, I wish I had more time with this person, whether it be through a breakup, a divorce, or maybe someone has passed, what that should tell you is that you really value connection, and something that you've been out of touch with is being fully present in the moment, or maybe even doing all you can when you're amongst friends, family, or loved ones. Because we now know this, the new relationships that you create and even the old relationships that you've been able to maintain is something that you should take more, something you should be more cherished about, something you should cherish more about, if you will. All right. Like, again, it shows you what you deeply value, what you deeply care about. Now, something that I alluded to earlier, I want to go back to it. It's this idea that, again, it's not the negative thoughts that cause depression, but it's how much you believe the negative thoughts that cause depression. Because everyone, and I mean this, that I've worked with has had the negative thought of, I'm not good enough. And because they have the thoughts that I'm not good enough, guess what they end up doing? And it's actually two things that I see. Either they tend to work really, really hard, right, to try to make sure that they are good enough, and that leads to burnout, exhaustion. Sometimes it leads them to comparing themselves to other people and being in this rat race, right? So there's one side of it, right? On the other side, when this happens, people tend to just isolate and give up on everything because they believe that they're truly not good enough. And if they try, right, whether it's to try to apply to the school, they try to start this business, try to start this podcast, anything like that, even if they try to get into a new relationship, they believe that they would not be good enough to fulfill it. And as a result, they self-sabotage it. They don't even try. And that's what keeps people depressed. It's when they truly believe everything that their mind is saying. So let's dial it back a little bit, okay? What I'm trying to say here is this. It's not the negative thought, but it's how you respond to the negative thought. It's not the negative thought that causes you depression, but it's how you hold that negative thought, all right? Do you hold it as if your life depends on it? Or is it something that you can let go as soon as you see it? That is the key. Because the more I can get you to let go of negative thoughts rather than holding on to them, trying to delete them and rip them up, or holding on and believing that they're you, the more I can get you to be more passive with your thoughts, the more free you are from your mind. Because the mind is not always going to tell you the most positive things. Sometimes it's going to tell you the most nastiest, ugliest things because it's trying to stop you from doing something that is perceived to be risky. And the key word is perceived. You know, I actually want to ask you that's listening, How often do you find yourself believing your negative thoughts? Because there's times where you have positive thoughts and you're able to do great things, but then there's time where these negative thoughts get in your way, and it's almost like you've forgotten how to walk. Like it's totally different, right? It's kind of like night and day. So how often do you believe these negative thoughts? How often do you allow negative thoughts to ruin your day? Is it a lot, right? Is it like 80-20? Like, how is it? These are the questions that I want you to start to ask yourself, because there's going to be a time in the future, maybe even before this podcast is over, that you're going to come across a negative thought. And it's not going to be, can I get rid of it or anything like that? It's more so, how literal am I going to take this thought? Is it almost as if I'm saying I am truly not good enough? Because that's not you saying it. It is your mind saying it. And I like to make that emphasis of the mind versus you, because when I can get that separation between the two, it frees you from believing, again, everything that the mind says. Now, here's another thing that causes a lot of depression. And again, it's not the negative thoughts, but it's the ruminating of the negative thoughts. You know, I always tell people that ruminating can kind of be like when you go to the dentist and you get your teeth numb, or you get your tongue numb because you're about to get a filling or something like that. And you walk out that dentist's office and your tongue is still numb, but yet you go to McDonald's, go to Wendy's, you go someplace and get something to eat or something to drink, and it's almost as if you can't taste it. You can't fully enjoy the meal that's in front of you because your tongue is still numb. That is what it's like when you're ruminating. It's like you're thinking and thinking and thinking, but yet you have this beautiful house in front of you, this beautiful family in front of you, or maybe you have beautiful accomplishments in front of you that you really can't see because you're ruminating over the mistake that you did make. This is where depression comes in. It's almost as if you're just whacking yourself over and over and over again with the belt. That's what ruminating looks like. And one of the best ways to overcome ruminating is first to actually notice that you're in a daze, if you will. I like to call it a daze. Sometimes I call it a fog, if you will. It's when you're in that hazy place and you can't really see straight, right? It's like when someone says, hey, did you hear me? And you look up and it's like, what, right? Because you've been off in the daze. You've been lost in your mind, if you will, right? So first, being able to notice it. Now, the second thing that will really help you is being able to use mindfulness to bring yourself back to the here and now. You know, one thing that I love talking about when it comes to confidence as well is your ability to be in this moment and not in future moments or past moments. Because by being in this moment, it gives you the best ability to be your best self. But also when it comes to happiness or fulfillment, it allows you to taste the thing that's in front of you. So this is like now the numbness has worn off from you going to the dentist, and now you go to another restaurant or whatever it is, or you eat at home, and now you're really able to taste that food. That's what it's like to step outside of the ruminating. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is that, yes, negative thoughts, they come, they go. We all have them, right? And that's a big point that I need to make as well. Think about it. Everybody has negative thoughts, but not everybody is depressed. And there's a big difference between depressed and being sad. Being sad is something that comes and goes. Maybe it's here for a day, maybe it's here for a couple of days, right? But depression is something that lasts over the course of 2 weeks. And in addition to that comes with not eating, and as a result, you're losing weight. Also, there's self-harm involved, wanting to take your own life. You're feeling lethargic. There's so many different criteria that goes into depression that isn't associated with sadness. And one of those things, again, is the length of time that we're feeling this way. All right, so that's a big difference that I want to make. But again, guys, the biggest thing that I want to make sure you know is that it's not the negative thoughts, because if it was, everybody you know would be depressed. So if that's not the case, then it has to be bigger than the negative thoughts. Am I right? Again, is how you hold on to them. So treat your mind as if it's a separate entity, or sometimes I tell people to treat it as if it's this guide or this friend, if you will, and it's just simply trying to give you advice. You don't listen to everything that your friend says, and you don't have to. You can actually tell your friend or your mind, thanks, but no thanks. Or thanks, I appreciate what you're doing, what you're saying, but I got this. Anything like that will help you give you that separation between you and your mind. All right, guys. So in this episode, I told you guys why negative thoughts do not cause depression. But again, it's how you hold on to those thoughts. It's how real, how literal you're taking them. And then also it's how much you're ruminating. You're just constantly lost in these negative thoughts. These are the things that leads to depression, not the negative thoughts themselves. All right, guys. I see you later.